Hi, I'm Mal from the Money Study, bringing you another episode of our Take 10 Challenge, number 41, What to Buy First. So here we are looking to start investing in some form or another, but where do we start? So there's the disclaimer, facts and figures, information only, not advice. And yes, so we've got this situation that we're keen, we're eager, we've found a bit of spare money, hopefully, and we are now looking to put it somewhere. And yep, we've decided that starting off with, we might buy some shares. Now, so there's some other, we're going to talk about lots of alternatives going forward. But let's just think about perhaps we're going to get into some shares and we're looking at, do we buy ANZ? Do we buy Commonwealth Bank? So do we buy a bank? Do we buy Rio? Do we buy BHP, one of the miners? Do we buy JB Hi-Fi or Harvey Norman? Now, you might hate some of these companies, you might hate some of the people that run them. You might have your own favourites, and so it goes on. But it comes down to, from a financial point of view, which one are we going to start with? Which two are we going to start with? In fact, which 10 are we going to start with, perhaps? And this is where it gets so daunting that a lot of people just won't even start because it just makes it too hard to know where they're going to put their first dollar. And so we've got to step back a little bit first. We've got to step back a little bit and look at it from what we are really trying to do, what we're trying to achieve, and so forth. Are we looking for longer term growth in these shares? So we're looking for companies that might have indeed got a chance of being the next big thing? Or are we perhaps looking for a nice, stable, safer sort of investment that's already doing okay, got potential for continuing to do okay, and it's actually getting good profits, so we get these dividends coming our way with perhaps some franking credits we talked about last time. And so we're looking for a bit of extra income, but with a little bit of security because it's a big company that's been around for a long time, and it's, in theory, its share price could go up or should go up, could go up over a period of time. So we might have to have a bit of an idea, are we taking a bit of a punt on something to get bigger, or are we looking for something, perhaps towards our retirement, looking for a bit of income here? Of course, it's very, very difficult to spread our money when we were talking about diversifying. If we've only got a small amount of money, very hard to diversify into some banks and miners and retailers, and so it goes on, in different countries and different bits and pieces, if we've only got a small amount to invest. So we've got to start somewhere, and then in the back of our mind realising that this is just the first piece of our overall portfolio. So if we struggle to diversify in the early days, okay, then perhaps we need to be looking at something that is a little bit safer, so that we can then build on that particular share and over time building up our portfolio. Now, as I say, the next couple of sessions, we are going to talk about these things called ETFs and LICs, LICs. And some of these options can indeed be a great way to start your investment portfolio. We'll explain why in the next couple of days or so when we look at things like LICs, listed investment companies, and ETFs, exchange traded funds. Don't be scared of the names. It's just a case that these may be a way where you can diversify our portfolio immediately. So we're buying parcels of shares. So we'll talk about that in upcoming sessions. But the first, whichever way you look at this thing, the first purchase is indeed the hardest. It's just getting that starting point. It can also be a bit daunting the first time you press the button even. And we will do sessions in the future on literally the mechanics of, setting up a portfolio, setting up an account, setting up how to place a trade, how to buy something, how to sell something, and so forth. We'll go through all of that. But no doubt about it, getting started with the first purchase is certainly the hardest. And this is where you might want to get yourself a friend, a mentor, someone who's already done it, so that they can, perhaps hold your hand when you place your first purchase or something like that. So, but as I keep on saying, it's a case of, you've got to sit back a little bit before you just jump in. You might have, gone to a barbie and your friend of theirs said that, oh, this is the next best thing. This is a lithium company or, this is an electronic EV vehicle or whatever it may be is the next flavour of the month that you should jump into. Now, whether you want to do that, that's totally up to you. But generally speaking, it's a case that if we're starting, are we starting from scratch? Is this your first purchase, or are you looking to add to something you've already got? And that can be a huge difference between starting what you might buy compared to you've already got something and you're looking to buy the next thing. It really is where what your starting point can have a lot to do with it there. But of course, when you're starting out, it's got to be something you feel comfortable with. Either the amount of money you put in is small enough so that you don't stress, okay, that's money that I lose that money, it's not going to put me in jeopardy, it's not going to destroy my retirement, and I'm not going to go into some sort of spiral of depression because I lost this money. So generally speaking, it's got to be an amount that you're happy with, but ideally it's an investment that you feel, yeah, look, I know this thing might go up and down a little bit, but longer term, potentially, this particular company or whatever I'm buying has got the potential. So we can always make wrong calls, and I certainly have done that. It's a case of we can only look forward, going forward. We can't kick ourselves in hindsight for buying the wrong share. We can learn from it, but no point just giving yourself too much grief if you bought something that lost. Most people then will just give up without understanding that that's a learning exercise. So when you're first starting out and you're looking for that first thing to buy, perhaps, are you just going to look in those, the big top 20 companies, your things like your Woolworths and your Commonwealth Banks and so forth? Or are you really thinking, no, look, what I'm trying to do here is I'm happy to go a little bit further afield because it's something I'm interested in, something I understand, something I believe has got a good potential. It's an area that is going to grow, and you might have a heap of reasons. Whether they're right or not, you'll only find out in hindsight. That's the downside. But it is a case of trying to work out initially where are we going to start. Now, look, it may be a case, we talk about diversification, where we're trying to get a bit of everything to sort of spread our risk or so. However, it can be a case where if you are an expert in one particular thing, and so you really, really understand that particular thing, you might even yourself come from a mining background, in which case you understand what it's like about, little gold companies and, what it means to start up a new oil research company in Western Australia or something like that. Good luck to you in that case. But it could be a case that by being an expert in something, I've got a friend who literally, he only buys one share. He buys Apple, and he buys and sells Apple. He thinks he understands what makes that stock move. And dare I say, he's done very, very well out of just buying and selling one particular company, and that's all he deals with. Now he's in and out every, could be weeks, it could be days, it might be a year depending on what's going on, but he literally just gets in and out of Apple, either adds to it or gets out and so forth, and he makes his money from those movements in something because he really does understand it. So diversification for him is not interesting to him. He's become an expert. So it's a bit like the saying is that if you don't put all your eggs in one basket, but if you do, keep an eye on the basket. That's basically what it comes down to there. So are you, with your portfolio, are you looking for the performance, as we said? Are we looking for dividends? Trying to get a bit of a feel for what we're trying to achieve before we even start. But over time, look, you are indeed going to gravitate to something. You will, things that just make sense, things that you feel comfortable with, things that you've done well with perhaps over time, you will indeed become, things that you just gravitate to. Yep, that's me. I feel good with that particular share. Now, if you are investing in individual shares, so you've got some banks, you've got some miners and so forth, then it's become a bit of a rough rule of thumb, and even the ASX website, they basically suggest that if you're trying to create a portfolio that's diversified, then really 12 to 20 should be sufficient. 12 different stocks, up to 20. Get too many individual ones, they become a little bit hard to keep track of what's going on. But that should give you sufficient diversification, without overwhelming you with too much information, too much things you've got to keep track of. So 12 to 20. So obviously, if you can only afford to buy one or two shares, we can't have a diversified portfolio if we're buying individual shares, because initially we're going to have too much in banks or miners or retail or whatever it may be there. So if you're going to start up, and perhaps you have bought a bank, well, then your next one is the next decision. Are you going to specialise in banks, or are you indeed trying to create a diversified portfolio? In which case you're looking for something perhaps in healthcare or technology, or a little company, a big company, and so it goes on. So it's a case of, it may be a case of you actually working out your portfolio even in advance. You say, okay, I think I'm going to buy these 10, these 12, these 15 over time when I can afford to do so. Which ones am I going to buy? These are the ones I'm going to buy. Which ones am I going to buy first? And so it goes on for various different reasons. So when we're looking for a stock, when we are indeed looking for a stock, Money Smart website, great website for information here. They recommend you look at and ask yourself these sort of questions. Will the goods and services this company provide be in demand in the future? Just imagine, getting into what they called Video City, when rental of VCRs and things was the go. Could we have projected in the future that their demand would just plummet off a cliff when streaming and so forth became the go, and so forth? DVDs. Look, it's one of those things that no one knows the future. No one knows the future. But obviously it's a case that some things have been around forever and will continue to be around forever. Funeral homes, perhaps, but there are all sorts of things that will always be there. And so it just comes to this thing: what are they doing? Will they be around for a long time? Will there be a surge? Will there be a surge in it? Are there opportunities for this company to grow? Well, that company in Australia is starting to get lots of different, is now into every state, and is now looking to go international, in which case that could be a good step, because when it goes international, it gets to a much broader market, and so it goes on. Could also be that the company's, thinks they're good and moves international, spends a lot of money and fails dismally. Like, there's been many Australian companies that have tried to do it internationally, and spent a lot of money and basically pulled themselves back later on back to Australia. So it's not always the case that by expanding, that's good news. It just depends how smart the company with their expansion. They're not doing it too quickly and take on too much debt to do it. Obviously a company that's got a monopoly, but the Microsofts of the world, how lovely, to be in that sort of situation. And even Google, which has got the vast market in what they do. Their competitors, they do have competitors, but they are so small in comparison that they're really not eating into the profits. So, who are the company's competitors? What's the ability for other competitors to come into the market, and who's going to survive? But again, this is all navel gazing. Because no one knows what is going to happen in the future. All we can really do here is, look at these questions, come up with something that we believe that makes sense to me, so that you feel comfortable in what you're doing. Because there's no point in doing something that you're not comfortable with, because of the first sign of any drama, the first thing you're going to do is sell, get out, and you think, well, that was a schmozzle, I'll never do it ever again. But anyway, the next few sessions or so, we're going to talk about ways to make this a bit easier. Now, so you might be quite happy to create your little diversified portfolio of shares, get the franking credits and the dividends, and happy ever after. But there are other ways, and we'll talk about those other ways in our future sessions. So look forward to you joining me.